Yo, buenos dias, que paso, you guys? John's Moto Garage. Welcome back to the channel. Today I want to bring you my full, comprehensive, in-depth ride review impressions of this 2023 Indian Sport Chief motorcycle. So without further preamble, let's go ahead and jump into it. Now, full disclosure, Indian did send this bike out to me. However, I'm not sponsored by them and they're not paying me for this video. And I told them I will do this if it's on my own terms. They might not like what I say, and they might not ever send me a motorcycle again, but we'll just see what happens. So let's start out with some of the boring stuff, just get it out of the way. This is a 2023 Indian Sport Chief, 116 cubic inch Thunderstroke air-cooled engine. That's going to be about a 1900 cc compared to Harley Davidson's 117 cubic inch engine, slightly bigger. This packs about 120 foot-pounds of torque and somewhere in the ballpark of 80 to 90 horsepower compared to Harley Davidson's 125 foot-pounds of torque. So yeah, there's no doubt this falls into the club style motorcycle. Indian has said an answer to pretty much every Harley bike minus the up to this point the Pan America and the Lowrider S, but this is no doubt a competitor to the Lowrider S. Some would call it a knockoff. I call it a competitor. I call it an alternative option. And for me, as soon as this bike rolled off the truck when it was delivered, I have to say, in person, beautiful looking motorcycle. I'm a huge fan of the Fox piggyback reservoir shocks, the mid controls, inverted forks, dual disc Brembo brakes, and the risers. Just beautiful looking motorcycle. And initial impression, this has a very premium feel to it. You can tell they put a lot of attention to detail in the fit and the finish category. It does not feel cheap. It doesn't feel like they cut corners really with anything in the time that I've ridden it. Comes with a little key fob and push button start. Twice, maybe 3 times, I've had an issue where I hit the push button start and it like just doesn't turn over, and then I have to do it again. But other than that, not a big deal. Some nice creature comforts on this bike. It comes standard with your cruise control, which is great on the freeway. You've got this little TFT touchscreen display, and you got some different riding modes, which we'll talk about in a little bit. The bike weighs about 685 pounds, 27-inch seat height, and I think that's about it as far as the specs off the top of my head. You can Google the rest of the specs. All right, so first thing, let's talk about the ergonomics. You throw a leg over the bike. I'm about 5'8", and I'm a huge fan of the mid controls. Huge fan of the mid controls. It fits just about perfect for me. However, I will say for taller riders, you will feel a little bit cramped. There's 2 things I think you can do about it. Is 1, either get a slightly taller seat that sits you up a little bit higher, or 2, just go with the forward controls, or 3, just stop complaining and deal with it, bro. No, I'm just kidding. 6-inch riser for me is a little bit of a reach. I would do something that has a slight pullback, but it's not so much of a reach that it causes any problems with the handling side of things. I do find myself sitting up a little bit closer to the front of the tank, the same way I do on my Harley, Dyna, and the same way I do with like a Supermoto, for example. But overall, I think the mid-control option is perfect for this bike, and it really lends to the handling and control side of things. Let's just go ahead. That's a perfect segue into the handling, performance, and comfort of the motorcycle. Oftentimes with a bike, you can get 1 or 2 of those, but rarely are you going to be able to get all 3 together: handling, performance, and comfort. And I've ridden tons of bikes in my days. I've had the VTX 1800, the Yamaha VMAX, the Magna, the Valkyrie, the M109R Boulevard, the Harley V-Rod, Kawasaki Vulcan S. I've ridden pretty much any and all, wannabe performance, sport, power, muscle cruisers you can imagine. And that has always been one of the biggest complaints is, those bikes, they're just, you're always sacrificing something. I think Indian did an awesome job blending and providing a well-balanced a little bit of all of those with this motorcycle. So let's start out with the handling side of things. This handles superbly well. I have more fun on this bike. I've had more fun on this bike than even on my FTR and the FTR 1200 that Indian sent out a while back. And handling is a big part of that. So whether you're just cruising around at low speeds in the neighborhood, or you're hitting the high speeds, wannabe twisties, for example, like we're doing now, which I'm not a professional racer, so don't judge me. But yeah, it handles really well. It feels a little bit heavy when you first throw a leg over and you're just parked, but as soon as you start moving, no problem at all. It does great in parking lots at those slow speed maneuvers, and it does awesome on the freeway. I've had this thing up to 112 miles per hour on perhaps one of the sketchiest roads here in Arizona. Potholes, you know, the whole nine. Just super, super sketchy. Not a problem whatsoever. Did not skip a beat. The Fox shocks, it feels super planted and super stable. This bike's got freaking sport, standard, and touring mode, and I don't even mess with freaking sport mode rarely, because even in standard mode it is plenty fast. It packs a punch, very sensitive, responsive throttle, where all of that is just magnified when you put it into the sport mode. It just becomes ridiculous. But I don't know the 0 to 60 numbers. I don't know all that crazy stuff, because you don't have to know that. All you know is you get on the bike, you crack the throttle, and the thing freaking takes off. And just as important as how fast you can go is how fast you can stop. And that's where this thing, I think, really shines and has an edge over the Harley Davidson, because the freaking Brembo brakes, super high quality, super awesome brakes. But what I love about it is it's a manageable power. It's a power that even a newer rider in standard mode, you're going to be able to get on it and actually have fun. You don't feel like you're constantly flirting with death or constantly having to hold back a ton. You can have fun ripping around a neighborhood at, you know, 25-30 miles per hour, because it's such a torquey, low-end, you know, punchy engine. But then also, if you get on those at those higher speeds, you have a ton of fun too. Like even on the freeway, you drop it into 5th gear and crack the throttle, and you just pull, you know, power for days. It's just not a problem at all. Let's talk about comfort. I've done hour-plus rides on this bike. I don't finish the rides getting off the bike with my back all hurting, my butt super sore. You know, this stock seat could use a little extra padding, but generally speaking, I found it to be a very comfortable bike. For touring long distance, yeah, you'll probably want to make a few tweaks and changes, and I don't have any real complaints or problems with that. All right, let's talk about the look of the bike. Obviously, that's probably one of the most controversial things. I know when it first came out, a lot of people, obviously, you know, rightfully so, criticizing Indian for just ripping off Harley Davidson. And yeah, it's a ripoff, man. It's built to compete with that lowrider S, but Indian did a good job putting their own spin on it, and I think they kept it unique in its own right. But yeah, the looks are definitely subjective, and for me it was kind of an acquired taste. Initially, this fairing was not a big fan of it, but I do find myself with the bike in my possession frequently looking back at it and thinking, man, that is a nice looking bike. And I've gotten a lot of compliments on the bike in just the short time I've had it. You know, I think the big thing people hate is going to be between the fairing, if you don't really dig it, but it is practical and functional, and then the exhaust. And exhaust, honestly, stock exhaust on pretty much any motorcycle is going to be, you know, relatively ugly. That's typically one of the first things that people are going to upgrade. So where I think this takes the edge over Harley Davidson is going to be with the premium components, the shocks, the Brembo brakes, you know, that come out of the gate on this thing. The touchscreen with all those upgrades. I don't know if Harley offers that on their standard lowrider S or not. Looks wise, ultimately for me, it's hard to beat that classic look of the Harley, I have to admit. This bike, while technically I have gotten it on one wheel, it is very, very difficult to do a proper wheelie. I've yet to do a proper wheelie on this, and I have messed around quite a bit. It feels almost like it has that traction control anti-wheelie mitigation built in, where as soon as you get traction, it cuts power on that rear tire. So I'm confident if I put enough time on the saddle, and if it were my own bike and I was able to figure out some adjustments, I think we could pull it off. But it's a little frustrating not being able to just jump on the bike and rip a dank nooner down the freeway at my leisure. But I guess we'll just have to be okay with that. Aside from that, I really have not been able to find anything where I just am really disappointed or not satisfied when it comes to this motorcycle. At about $19,000, if you're looking for a bike to jump on and have for a long time, that's rad and needs little to nothing out of the gate. I mean, honestly, other than aftermarket exhaust, this is it. And it will certainly put a grin on your face. It will be a fun bike. It may land you in some hot water and trouble if you can't control that throttle hand. Woo! But you're gonna have a blast on it, man. You will have a lot of fun. Like and subscribe if you dig the content. Let me know below, what do you think about this Indian Sport Chief? You love it or hate it? Drop a comment below, let me know, and we will catch you guys on the next one. Like, subscribe, and adios.